fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And literally before he got to Heathrow Airport, they had registered our name and our brand and everything about us in South Korea. If you're looking for investment, you've got to have those solid understanding about your market opportunity and the fact that somebody other than your granny is going to buy it. The market in the UK, it was worth 150 million a year. If I could get 20% of that market, what would that mean? It is absolutely vital to know your consumer. It's the meat and drink, the size of your opportunity. Without that, you're flying blind, and that's a way to lose vast amounts of money. If you really want to understand what people think about your brand, go and get a clipboard, go into the high street, and go and ask some people some questions.
Hi, I'm Caroline Carey and welcome to the Eat Nourish Love podcast. For over 20 years, I've created events, raised over 4 million for good causes, and been lucky enough to meet some incredible people along the way. This podcast is about exploring stories and insights that really shape us, with inspiring guests from wellness, business, self-care and personal growth. It's about learning to trust our intuition and discovering what truly matters, and how, with hard work, belief and tenacity, we can make so many things happen. So Joanna, welcome to the Eat Nourish Love podcast. It's really exciting to have you on here today. Gosh, there's an awful lot I want to cover really, because a lot of the philosophy that you will talk about today has been intrinsically in me, and I don't know whether you know my story, and I'll come on to that. But firstly, welcome Joanna. You are a founder of the British multi-award winning baby and child personal care Child's Farm, which you created in 2010. Because of a situation with your daughter. But previously, you're an investment banker in London and Hong Kong. And then you transformed an emotional need into a brand, which was launched into the mainstream retailers in Boots and Waitrose in 2014, and then you sold 92% of your shares in 2022 of Child's Farm for 36.8 million. And then you've just sold the last 8%, I believe, early this year. And now you've launched a book. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Caroline. It's a joy to be here.
So firstly, also two things I missed out there really was that you sit on many boards, and you also are very prolific in investing in female founders. I think you are investing about 11 as well. So there's an awful lot that we need to cover. And actually, I was listening to the reason why it was called Child's Farm the other day, and that's really interesting. All about the apostrophe. So where did it all begin?
Well, it all began because my youngest daughter popped out and she was covered in eczema. So she had atopic eczema, which I didn't realise till she arrived. 1 in 5 under 5s in the UK have it, and a high proportion as well in the US. So it's something that I think is much more prevalent than it was when I was a child and had atopic eczema. But it wasn't till I went to go and buy something for her that I realised nothing had changed since the early 70s when I was growing up. So it struck me as something that needed to change, because all I was offered was steroids and that awful stuff, oilatum, that sits on the top of the bath like a floating oil slick. Yeah. And I thought, that's really not helping. But I look back to what my mother had done for me, which was using as much moisturization as possible on my skin. She used shea butter, cocoa butter, stuff that the Egyptians had used 4,000 years ago to soothe burnt, dry, tender skin. And that was what I started doing before starting to make my own products, and then moving on to actually getting a professional outfit to do it for me. So it really was, like many women, it was a need. I needed something for my child that wasn't available on the market.
Do you know, it's really funny. Is your daughter called Annabelle or Bella? What's her name?
And the youngest one is Bella.
So I've got an Annabelle, and she's named Bella by her friends. And it was due to her situation she was born that I then took all the harmful ingredients out of our products. That was 29 years ago. So all the propylene glycol, all those things. And it was a systemic issue because it was with her eye. But it's so interesting to see that there was nothing out there. And you know, it's extraordinary. But what was because I think, if I'm right in saying that it is a cosmetic brand, Child's Farm. It was not
it's not medical, no. So it was. Exactly. It's sort of interestingly enough, and I think this is sort of quite. It was quite a funny experience for me that it because we said it was suitable for eczema-prone skin. We had to go to the borderline agency, which sits between the medical agency, which is the MHRA,
right,
and cosmetics. And it's anything that people are not sure whether, you know, dandruff, for example, actually you need is not a cosmetic. It's a medical diagnosed treatment. So you have to get approval from the MHRA for that. But because eczema, even though it was medical and we said it was suitable for eczema-prone skin, they weren't 100% sure. So I actually went to go and see them, and they agreed. We changed the terminology in the UK that it was suitable for sensitive and eczema-prone skin, which hadn't existed before. And that so any brand could use that if it had the right consumer and it had the right clinical trials. But as they said to me, how can we even think of describing this as a medical product? You've got a pony in with its mane in rollers on the front of your product. It's hard for anyone to say that this is medicinal. So it was all to do with the packaging as well. So, you know, my lesson from all of that is really build relationships with the people that matter with what you're trying to do, because it's very easy to just put the blinkers on and think it doesn't matter and you'll get away with it, or, you know, just throw lawyers at the problem. But actually, we built a really good relationship with the borderline agency, and it meant that we managed to change the way that people were allowed to talk about brands on their labels.
I mean, that was a big thing, because I do remember being involved in some of the products many years ago, and you know, you couldn't make these claims. And I know you have to be so careful with these things, don't you?
You do, because, and quite rightly, and I mean, I know I hear a lot, particularly with my work in enterprise investment scheme, people complain about, oh, I've got to fill in all these forms and it's such a pain and there's so much to do. Well, everything is open to abuse, and that's the way you need to look at it. There is a reason for the rigor. And with us, it was to make sure that these products that we were selling for infants and children were appropriate for them. So I didn't begrudge any of this. I wanted to be sure that we not only hit every hurdle, but we flew over it with lots of air, because everything that we had done was making sure it was appropriate for the end consumer. And that's the mindset you need to have. You can't sit there and go, oh, you know, it's more legislation and it's more bureaucracy. There is a method to the madness. And if you are more than capable and absolutely brilliant at what you're doing, and if you've done all the right things, it's not a problem. You'll fly through everything.
I think it's an extraordinary thing, actually, what you've just said, because you know, creating all those lovely characters on and all the packaging was so much fun, and you had all the animals and the children involved, and you know, even the getting your children to brush their hair. It had you were talking about a hairbrush once. You've got a pony on it to get the children to brush hair, but you know, you can have so much fun with that creativity, can't you? If you've got the legislation in place. If you're always worried about what you're doing, then the creativity loses its fun or its creativity, because actually, you know, you're worried about the legislation, and if you get over that, you're halfway there.
There's a marvellous adage which is prepare to fail. Okay, so but fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So prepare yourself. And interestingly enough, I'm just writing an article about this, which is all about getting ahead of the game. You don't want to live your career or your brand's life in fear of being caught up. And that means, you know, like I said about our relationship with the borderline agency at the MHRA, trading standards. I got to know my local trading standards. I took them through every label before I printed it for the first time because I wanted their approval well in advance to know that they were on board. So if we had any pushback, I had a relationship there that I could immediately pick up on. And I think all of this, get ahead of the game. Don't live in, I know that there are certain elements where you can go ahead and ask for forgiveness rather than permission, but legislation is simply not one of those.
Lovely, lovely quotes you come up with. Prepare to fail, plan, or whatever. And also, beg forgiveness, isn't it? There's that lovely quote. But also, you had a situation where you put yourself in a very strong legal position. And if I'm rightly saying, someone took over your name and brand and took it to another country.
Yeah, we had a international distributor came and saw us in the office. I mean, it was far too soon for us, but you never know when you're in a position to do these things. And literally before he got to Heathrow Airport, they had registered our name and our brand and everything about us in South Korea. And that was infuriating because I had been really, really, really robust about making sure everything to do with our brand had been registered, the intellectual property to do with it. And we had done international, but we hadn't done South Korea. And it took us 18 months and about 25 grand to get our own name and our own branding back in our name. And that's just infuriating. That, I would say, was really, really unlucky. But again, we then had a rule that if you were, whatever country you were looking to potentially extend into over the next 2 years, the first thing you did 2 years out was register our name and our get up. So the look of the bottle in that country. It happened in the UK and we got that stopped. And there was another brand that copied us. We're so shameless. They actually cut and pasted from our website, including typos. So, I mean, and this goes back to what I say. We are, by and large, we are just very generous people. We think that everyone behaves in the same way that we do. And, there is a conscientiousness behind all of our activity. It's simply not true. There are some absolute rogues out there. And we saw it through the COVID loan fiasco. We see it constantly. We've seen it through R&D tax credits, which is research and development tax credits, that the government is quite rightly clawing back now. I can't, they were meant to be issued to businesses that are creating innovation. So Charles Farm was entitled to claim them because we were creating products that soothed eczema-prone skin. We were doing new innovation, which had not been done before, putting ingredients together that made an impactful change to a child's skin. Whereas I've seen businesses that make jeans claim R&D tax credits. It's meant to be medicinal or scientific breakthrough. And, again, quite rightly, that's all stopped because people are very naughty. Fundamentally, we cannot continue to judge people by our own ethics and values because there's some real wrong uns out there.
Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting because you've been very thorough. And I think when we come onto your book that, there's a bit of a roadmap there and how you do things. And I think there's something that you also talked about is the fact that when you started Charles Farm, you went out and before you decided it was a good idea, just because it was a good idea, like many people do, you said, well, is there a need to this? Who's our customer? Who are we talking to? Who wants to buy these products?
Totally. And I mean, my big drum that I bang is know your consumer, know your consumer, know your consumer. I mean, interestingly enough, so many people do they have this wonderful idea and they just go for it. And it can be an utter disaster because whilst you think that something that can, I don't know, where I think in the book we talk about creating strawberry marmalade. You think it's a great idea, but actually the only person that's going to buy it is your mum. And that's out of sympathy. You really need to be robust and understand who is out there. What does your market look like? How big is it? I recently looked for somebody at doing something for tweens, a skincare range for tweens.
Yes.
The reality is, 9 to 13-year-olds, there's only 2 million of them in the UK. Is that a business? If you've got 10% of that market, it's still not a business by the time you've put in all the energy to create something, people behind it. And also the logic for young people is they don't want to use something that's been created for them. They want something that is being created for much older children, because that's how the mentality and the way that psychology works behind it all. So you have to do that piece of research before you start spending a lot of money. And I do talk in the book that there are some really wonderful ways to get that research for nothing. The British Library and its BIPC hubs is fantastic. There's now 19 across the UK. You can go there. Any piece of research that's ever been published is available. They buy it within their business centres. And it means you can have a good old understanding and a good old read about what's out there, what market category information is available to understand, is your idea, is there a market for it? Of course, if it's a brand new idea, I look at my friend Vivian Wong, who set up Little Moons, which are these little ice cream mochi, which just didn't exist in the UK. She did a flyer, but her family's business was making pastries, cakes, and ice cream was a deviation for them. So, and that took 10 years before that took off. And now there's no stopping her and Howard. But, this is, you've got to have, especially if you're looking for investment, you've got to have those solid understanding about your market opportunity and the fact that somebody other than your granny is going to buy it.
Why the British Museum? Can you not do it online? Is there not enough online?
The British Library. So, yes, you can do it online. You just have to sign up and they have physical hubs. The joy about going to one of the hubs is that you can sit there and you can literally look through it all, and you can have a rummage through the shelves. There are also people there that can help you, which is super helpful. And a lot of this you can do online.
Yeah. But it's sometimes it is quite good to get out of your computer in your one space, because you can have ideas, can't you? And you have other ideas. So what was your market when you looked at Child's Farm? How big was your market?
So the market in the UK, that it was worth 150 million a year. So this was baby and child toiletries, so baby and child consumer products. Now, I also read the research, and that did not include nappy cream, it did not include wipes, and it did not include sun care. Yeah. So our range actually took on nappy cream and sun care. So it was I had to look at that separately. So I immediately knew that there was an opportunity of 150 million in the UK. I could then say, right, if I could get 20% of that market, what would that mean? How much would somebody have to spend in a year? How many consumers would I need in the course of a year? Not forgetting some of them are going to leave, because those products probably end when a child is 9. So you have the baby range, which would be, say, 0 to 2.5. And then you'd move to the general range, which was the multicolored range. So you'd say at a stretch, it would be 9. Let's assume it ends at 7. So I could then see the number of babies that were born every year, which averaged around 600,000. I could then work out how many of those were first babies or second, third babies. So all of that built up this picture of the size of the opportunity. And by doing that, I could build a business plan. But without that intelligence, it was going to be impossible for me to build a business plan, because I had no idea what the opportunity was. Also, I needed help. I needed investment to be able to build this business. And I wouldn't get investment if I couldn't show them, my potential investors, the size of the opportunity, how I was going to get there, and the robust business plan that showed all those steps from foundations all the way up to an exit. So it is absolutely vital to know your consumer. It's the meat and drink, the size of your opportunity. Without that, you're flying blind, and that's a way to lose vast amounts of money.
I think also a lot of people say, well, don't worry about it because Meta can find your your person, and actually, if you don't know who you're talking to, and I've got to say, so much of what you say is common sense. It's made me think a lot about what I'm doing at the moment as well. But it's if you don't know who you're talking to, how on earth can a machine work it out?
Well, do you really think that Mark Zuckerberg gives two shits about what your consumer looks like? Of course he doesn't. He just wants your money. And the reality is it's going to be skewed data. I mean, again, I remember talking to somebody and saying, I think we should do a collaboration with my friends at Biscuiteers for new babies, because, I mean, what's the one thing that somebody buys you when you have a new baby is a box of biscuits or some muffins or whatever. And what is it you crave when you're a mum, nursing mum? It's just anything that you shouldn't eat normally, but just, a nice dose of sugar would be fabulous. And somebody went away and they came back and they said, I spoke to our agency and they said that they looked on Meta and there is no correlation between new mums and buying biscuits. I mean, you sometimes you have to put your common sense hat on and flick a V sign to somebody who actually hasn't really bothered to do their job properly. Because the reality and what AI is telling you can be poles apart. Yeah. And I think if you rely on Meta for all of your data, you should possibly go and sit in the naughty step for a bit. And it's lazy man's data. Yes, it gives you an idea about what's going on. But, I say to all of my brands, if you really want to understand what people think about your brand, go and get a clipboard, go into the high street and go and ask some people some questions. When you've got a bit more money, go and do some qualitative research, which you can get a third party to do for you. But in the meantime, go and ask the questions. I did that when I had my first selection of a range. I gave it out to mums at my kids' schools. I gave it out to anyone, really. I'd sort of hijack people in the street and give them a survey and say, can you please fill that in and come back to me and let me know what you think about. It was everything from the look and feel to the fragrance to how it felt on the skin. And that gave me insight. And it was something that was tangible. Meta's not going to give you tangible insight. But it will take your money. I mean, I've got brands that I know of that are spending £150,000 a month on Meta.
Yeah.
They're betting the house.
But, I've done it. I've had a few things where I've done it, and then you go, just that this money is just being eaten up. I need to get onto my WhatsApp friends, and they know what I'm doing, but much better than that. I need to incentivize people who know me and people in the war market who want to help, want it to succeed, and even if they want to earn a bit of money, it's a different way of doing it. Alan Sugar, there was a story that he used to one day a week go and sit in the high street or go and walk around and watch what the consumer was doing.
I used to do, God, I can believe it. I used to go to Boots and I used to go to Waitrose and I would just stand at the end of the aisle and watch what they were doing and what they were buying. And I would sort of sit there and I'd stand there next to them and sort of say, oh, why are you, just out of interest, why are you picking that one over that one? So if someone picked up a Johnson's Baby over a Child's Farm product, I'd say, why are you taking that? I've seen this again on my book tour recently. By talking to people face to face and engaging with people and having those conversations, my impact on LinkedIn is that much greater.
Yeah.
And that much broader. And it's like, who am I talking about the book to? It's not just budding entrepreneurs, people that have actually started and starting up, but it's also those people who have already established that might want to do an MOT on their business. And it's university students. Before we did the tour, we created, I think we had 5 different consumers that we wanted to target. These were people that we felt and that we had conversations around that would want to purchase the book.
And people love it, don't they? I think that the secret is people love to help, love to be included, love to have an opinion about something, and actually you shouldn't be frightened to ask people.
No, but don't fall down that trap of having an opinion of one. There's always going to be someone who's got a very loud voice who says you can't do this. I had one when I was doing Child's Farm who told me that all my labels were too bright, too colourful, and they would stand out too much on shelf versus the pale, insipid colours of everybody else in the baby and child aisle. And I just ignored him.
I want just a couple of questions. First of all, I just want to ask you about the name and why it has an apostrophe.
So Child's Farm, I couldn't think what to call it. And we lived in a farmhouse at the time that was originally, I hadn't realised, called Child's Farm. And it was named that after the family that built it, whose surname was Childs. And so it was a surname, not anything else. And in fact, the apostrophe should have been after the S. But we took a view that when you were filling in all these supermarket databases, when you're putting your products online, if we put any apostrophes in there, it was going to confuse things. And also we didn't think it looked as nice on the label. So we did something that was grammatically incorrect for aesthetics.
So interesting. And I'm sure you have had kickback on that, but it's really...
we had numerous teachers writing to us, I can tell you. And I'm a complete pedant as well, so it was really hard for me to do it, but I knew it was the right thing to do.
And all the characters, the children were involved, weren't they? All the children were all involved.
Yeah, so the initial labels, and actually those up until about 6 months ago actually included my kids and some of their friends, but all of their animals.
I wanted to come on to a little bit was the wellness, the health aspect of it, because people forget that the skin is one of the biggest organs on our body, and it's porous and everything. There's a lot more information. I'm very lucky because, well, I went through a situation that made me my father was a specialist in medicine. So I came from a medical background. I understood what drugs did. And he used to say, if you take that drug, you'll have to go on another drug for another drug and it'll, hit everything. So we actually didn't have lots of medicines as children. But actually I then, when I brought the children up, very much worked on the homeopathic side, cranial osteopathic work.
Exactly the same as us. Exactly the same as us. Yeah.
And we didn't use all these lots of chemicals and things like that. But I think I was, it was 29 years ago that I took those harmful ingredients out, and there was very few. I was involved in a network marketing company as a consequence of it, because actually I love the products and actually was very successful in it. And when I came out of it, I still use the products, but they've just been discontinued as of last year. So I was on them for 28 years. And I've used some of your lovely products. But the education of skin, because obviously prevention is better than cure. I know, for example, putting the cream on a baby's bottom, because we is ammonia, isn't it? So just tell me the philosophy of the wellness and that aspect of it, and why, and really how difficult it was to bring that sort of product into the market.
Yeah, brilliant question. Like you, Mum was a nurse and we never had any medicines in our household. We were all treated homeopathically. And so were my girls. And I was shocked by the amount of drugs people are willing to give away. And if you look at a lot of the ingredients of these legacy brands in skincare, it's all about sealing the skin as opposed to healing the skin. So you want something that's going to be absorbed. You're quite right. It's the biggest organ on our bodies. You need to treat it with respect and care. And there is really genuinely no need to have all of these man-made chemicals in your skincare products, because they're there because they're cheap. They make a production run quicker, cleaner, quicker, easier to do, and therefore create bigger shareholder value. It doesn't mean that they're right. Think about cheap cosmetics like you would ultra high processed foods. Yeah. They're there for a quick hit and to make you look good for 5 minutes. But actually, long term, they're doing you more harm than good. So, in the same way that you should look for organic food products, you should look for where its origin is, how, you should look on your fruit to see what preservatives have been sprayed onto it, because you're just about to consume those preservatives. You should do the same for your skincare. And particularly if you've got young children, because a piece of research I was looking at the other day, and annoyingly, I took it off my desk, but which a friend of mine, Sarah Brown, who's the founder of Pi Skincare, pulled together. And this was about 9 to 13-year-olds. One in four 9 to 14-year-olds has put retinol on their skin. Now, retinol should only be used, it's predominantly used as an anti-aging because it rips the top layer of your skin off. That's why us old dears can have a go with it. It is not, absolutely not for young skin. But because there is all this advertising on social media about using all of these products, and then you have products like Drunk Elephant that are all the colors of the rainbow and really enticing for that younger generation, it's perceived that this is what is suitable for young skin. Young skin should have nothing other than a moisturizer and a cleanser, both of which have got no chemical, what I would look for when I'm buying a product, and you can look up this research, it's called Stay Skin Sharp, and it's backed by the British Skin Foundation. And it's very clear about what you need to avoid. But I would say only buy products from a company, skincare products, that is very clear that they are a clean skincare product. That usually means they're a smaller independent. But you need to check that there's no horrible sulfates in there. You should look for anything that's got an incredibly long name. Yes, an INCI list, which is your list of ingredients, is in Latin. That's just the rules behind it. But a decent brand will put in parentheses what that ingredient actually is. Go onto their website, look up, see what it's telling you is there. Don't be naive about what skincare products do for you, because anything that says it's going to get rid of your wrinkles is lying. As you get older, it's a lack of collagen in your skin, and the only way you can improve that is either by having a facelift, Botox, or collagen injections. A skincare product, a cream, will not help with that. All it will do is it's got artificial ingredients in it. It will tighten your skin. That's all it's doing. And don't believe any of the hype. But when it comes to young skin, less is more. So when we created Child's Farm, it was all about what should be in there and taking out what didn't have a place there. So for us, that meant working with a manufacturer who understood about natural and natural origin, organic. And I found one who had fantastic credentials, including working for then Dutch Originals, which was at that time the Prince of Wales's brand before it was bought by Waitrose. And it stayed with me right to the end until I left the business. Now, I know Child's Farm formulations have changed now, and I can't comment on anything that they've changed to. But for me, again, look for a brand that's a B Corp, so that it's a registered B Corporation, which means it follows a policy of ethics and values all the way through their everyday dealings. They'll ask you questions to become a B Corp about how much water you use, where your water comes from, how much you spend on petrol, what's your hiring process. You've got to actually have in your articles of association that you put progress, sustainability, and fairness ahead of profit. So it's got to be a brand that actually really cares about people and the world. And I know this has been a really long answer, but I cannot tell you how much wool is being pulled over our eyes out there about all forms of products, not only cosmetics, but food as well. And if in doubt, say no.
No, I thank you. I think this movement. I'm actually. It's very interesting to watch the younger generation and my children who now got grandchildren and what they're doing, and I think it's fantastic because they are really leading with. I'm not saying that everyone's doing it, but I think they are very, very much leading this side of it. I want to come back to your book. But what made you... So when you sold Child's Farm, there must have been a time in your life when you actually thought, actually, we want to sell it, but you didn't. And then, so how come the sale happened?
Well, look, I come from an investment banking background. So I've always been commercial. And I set up Child's Farm twofold, really. One was a need for my daughter, Bella, and her poorly skin. But the other was I was newly divorced. I didn't have any money and I had to have a career again. I didn't want to go and work in the city and not see my children. And so I wanted to do something I could do from home. So it was all sort of happy fortune, I suppose. But it was a commercial enterprise. And I had 26 investors, which meant to them it was a commercial enterprise too. And the moment that you take on external investment is the moment that you have committed to at some stage creating an exit, because that will have been one of the reasons that they invested in you. So for us, it was a matter of when. And funnily enough, we were looking to get additional investment through private equity just before COVID. And then COVID struck. And then after COVID, we went back to that plan. And we hadn't, at the time, we weren't actually intending on selling it. We were looking at getting significant investment so we could grow internationally. But we then had a trade invitation through PZ Cousins that was appealing. And of course, as we went through the process and we got to the second and final offers, I had to do what was best for my shareholders. And by that stage, some of them had been with me for 10 years. And for them, an exit would be fantastic. And to get 17 times their initial investment.
That's phenomenal.
All of which had been made through the EIS, Enterprise Investment Scheme, meant it was also capital gains free. So they had to pay no tax on the investment, was exactly what they wanted. And it was the right time for me too. I think you know when you're ready. You know when you're done. It didn't make it easier. I mean, it was like sort of cutting off a leg. But it's 6 months into the sale, and I just about stopped shouting at Instagram. And I was sort of settled into the journey, my new journey, which was not being an intimate part of Child's Farm anymore. And I had other stuff to do.
How did you feel?
Well, the first 6 months, wretched. I thought I'd made the most enormous mistake. What was I thinking? My husband kept on saying, go and look at your bank balance. But I then said, some really sensible friends of mine had said, do not do anything for 6 months after you sold the business.
Yeah.
So it took me about 6 days before I made my first angel investment, and then I didn't stop. So I needed to fill my days with stuff that wasn't Child's Farm, because I'd gone from working 24/7 to, twiddling my thumbs.
I want to come back to the female founders and investment and what you want to do, but can we just go to your book? Because you've just launched a book in September. How long did that take you to write?
Start to finish, between starting it and it being published, was about 2 years. So a lot longer than you think, but it wasn't a full-time job, as it were. I was doing it piecemeal, and I wasn't in a rush because I had other things to do. So the timing was perfect, because I sold the last of my shares at the beginning of January this year. And so I had to, then it was, the build up to publication takes quite a lot of work. So it was all, bizarrely, it was done according to a timetable that was in my head. and quite happy with the way that it all panned out, actually. But it was something I needed to do.
Were you asked to? Who's the publisher? Who were you asked to publish?
Kogan Page. No, I did it. I needed to get it out there, and I didn't. Weirdly, I went about it the wrong way. You're meant to go and see a publisher. Well, you're meant to have an agent. Your agent then goes and finds you a publisher based on your pitch for a book. But I didn't. I just wanted to get it down there.
That's quite an unusual thing, because if you think about how you planned the whole Child's Farm, and then the book was slightly back to front then.
Well, no, but I was very unconventional in what I did with Child's Farm as well, in the way, not necessarily my foundations, but the way that I sold it in. But for me, it was because I was working with so many brands at the time, it made a lot of sense to me to give them some help and advice, which was more structured and formulated as soon as I could, rather than, waiting for that, someone to come along and say, yes, we'll publish, go ahead and write that book and we'll publish it. And publishing books in this day and age is tough. It's really hard to have something out there. And it kind of, everything else that I was doing, and I write for the Sunday Times and other publications as well, it all made sense and it worked in a way that actually I'm really comfy with. And we're doing the second half, because I wrote so much, we had to split it into 2 books. So the second half is being published in September. So we start now with how to build, and then we move on to how to scale. So, well, it's going to be a bit of a Bible for people, because you've also got, if I'm right in saying, you've got some of the people that you work with and how you've done it. I mean, what comes across speaking to you and getting to know you is that you have a huge amount of common. You've got obviously the financial background, the investment background. A lot of it is huge common sense, and I think actually sometimes, that can be quite frightening, because people don't want to do all the steps. They just want to do this fluffy stuff. And actually, you there's a process. But once you do that process and you follow it through, so it's a little bit like it could be a Bible for a lot of people, couldn't it? Well, that's the plan. And it's not only writing through all my steps, and lots of my mates are sharing their experiences too, but also at the back, I've got a little black book, which is names and contacts of people that have helped me, and how, from angel investors through to, trading standards, to all these people, because when you start a business, you don't know what you don't know. And there is a huge risk you end up like a bunch of toddlers playing football and everyone's chasing the ball. Whereas actually, from day one, you had to start setting up your defense and your attack. And there has to be some method to your madness. Otherwise, it just all deteriorates into chaos. Could be fun, but it'd be chaos and no one's going to win, least of all you. So what I've tried to do is create this structure and share what took me months, if not years, to learn in a 6-minute chapter.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think with what's going on in the world, in terms of particularly in sort of the female founders, people going back into the corporate world and wanting to come out, being dissatisfied, wanting to be with their children, and obviously COVID's made a huge shift in that. Also with AI launching through so many jobs, there's going to be more and more people setting up businesses. There's going to be more and more people doing income streams. So they'll find different ways to bring in income for the families rather than just an employment job. So it's going to be a really important book for people to read. Well,
I hope so. And I think as well, with this threatened day one employment law change to legislation, I think businesses are going to be more reluctant to hire as that legislation makes it more difficult for employers. And the cost of hiring employees is become greater as well. And we're already seeing the rate of unemployment going up, and horrific statistics about graduates trying to find employment. And with AI on the increase as well, we just have to be a bit more savvy about what we're doing. And being your own boss comes with huge rewards. It comes with huge risks, but it's finding the balance between the two. And I think, and I hope that this goes a long way. Listen, I'm not going to make my fortune out of this book. In fact, we looked at the P&L for the book the other day and just sort of trying to work out how much we really are going to lose having done this, because this is a passion project. This is not a commercial exercise at all. And we go around universities as well, because what I want to do is to stop people wasting time on stuff that doesn't matter. And
education in the educational side, I mean, that's going to be massive, isn't it? Because we haven't moved on. In fact, I'm just getting involved a little bit in the Children's Parliament, and it's fascinating because there's so much that can shift. There is so much that's going to shift, and things are moving so fast with it. So, how's the book made up? What's the sort of So, how's the book made up in terms of the chapters and what you're telling people?
Right. Well, so basically what I've done is I sort of start on a journey. This is what it looks like, by the way.
It's great.
And it starts off, I start talking about the qualities of an entrepreneur because, it's not for everyone. And so one of the first things I do is a kind of like a little test. You go through it. Does this sound like me? It's quite, I'm going to have to make some decisions, particularly if I've got family commitments or I've got young children. And then talking about finding and assessing and developing your idea. And that, and at the end of it, I've actually got a sort of little set of scales that's sort of saying, do I go or do I not go? Because there's no shame in saying, do you know what? It's not for me right now, or it's something I might do later. All this whole entrepreneurial thing sounds absolutely terrifying. No thanks. But I want to give people the opportunity to know what it's going to look like. They can dip their toe in it before jumping in. And then we go through talking about understanding your consumer, how you create a brand, what it should look like. I've got the head of marketing from Peter Cousins talk about the 7 elements of an outstanding brand. Then, of course, the legal. Gosh, you don't want anyone to happen what happened to me in South Korea. So how you protect your intellectual property, how you go from prototype to production line, how you build your business plan, how you do your sales forecast and margin, your supply chain, your marketing, goes through all of this to get you at a stage where you're ready to launch. And that's what this book focuses on. All the nitty gritty, all the stuff you don't know, from creating an idea to getting it on the shelf.
Can I come back? Because you said this is when an idea... in terms of before you launch. Now, people will want to read your book who've already launched. So this is for anybody, isn't it?
It's for anyone. I go through in it. It's like an MOT. If you've already launched, it's like an MOT for you, because I go through setting up a website. It's not just you set it up once and you forget about it. You've got to keep going back to it. All the things that you need with your manufacturer. I mean, I remember when I started off, I didn't have a brief from my manufacturer. I didn't know the things to look out for. Logistics. What's the right way to find a decent logistics partner? We went through 4. I wish I'd known this right at the beginning. We'd have got it right day one. Legal contracts. They keep coming through. And my legal partner has written a really robust chapter about finding out what are those rabbit holes and those elephant traps so you can avoid them. And also, a lot of people set up, they do their business plan and it's not robust. I've used my former commercial director, my former CFO, who are utterly brilliant in this place, to not just write a vague little list about what you need to know. They've put in spreadsheets, they put in headings, they're telling you exactly how you calculate your future forecast. This is proper, soup to nuts stuff that'll make a difference. And then I talk about marketing at length because, again, I say meta is not the be-all and end-all. There are so many other ways of reaching your consumer, but knowing you keep dialing back to what that consumer looks like. You don't, once you've got a business plan, it's fluid. It's always changing. But if you've started your business, if you want to give it a really robust tire kick, buy this and go through that with a fine-tooth comb, and you will find things that you've missed. And again, I'm writing my New Year essay, I suppose, that I'm doing in the Sunday Times is about all those things that you need to, at the new year. It's not about new year, new you. go through, check all of your checklist on your business. Have you done all of these things? Is your IP registration up to muster? Have you got a product recall plan procedure? You know, what happens if your website gets attacked? Have you got a crisis management process for if your website comes under attack? All of these things. So prepare to fail. Don't fail to prepare.
I think it is quite scary, but I think it's like when you go into it and you sit there and you really read through what you're talking about here, it can be very empowering too, can't it? Because it can go, gosh, actually, and you wake up the next day feeling really fulfilled and really strong because you've gone back to your messaging. What did I really mean by that? What is the business? Whose problem am I solving? You know, and you know, are they time poor? Who are they? Who are these people? I'm just so excited, and I have to say the book has been given to me for Christmas because I didn't know I was doing this call until a few weeks ago, and so I put it on my Christmas list. So I haven't bought it because I know it's been bought for me. Female founders, you have invested in, I think, about 11 of them. What is it that you look at? What is it inspires you, and who's it that you jump on board with?
Oh, what a good question. It's a couple of things. The individual themselves, I want to see somebody who is passionate, who's excited, who is intelligent, who is intellectually curious, who has got a robust understanding about what they're doing and why they're doing it, is open to suggestion, but is also comfortable in their own opinion, who has just got a desire to do better, who is not afraid to ask multiple questions, and has come and presented me with an investment deck that makes sense, is full of common sense, and is not telling me that I'm going to be a billionaire in a fortnight.
So actually what you're saying here almost is that the product can be a fantastic idea, but you're looking also at the person.
Yes, and I think the person for me is probably about 70%. And then the product itself, I have to understand. I don't have to, I mean, I've invested in tech, and I can assure you I am not tech savvy. But I need to understand that there's a need for it and that there's a place for it. And again, that comes across in all of the data that should feature in the investment deck. So that's understanding what the consumer opportunity is or the business opportunity is. All of that will come out of the information that's being shared when somebody's looking for investment. So what my book does is prepare you to bam, here we go. I've got this amazing deck and I've got everything, all of those things that are in my book are in that deck. So I, as an investor, can look at it and say, okay, tick, 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 tick. I've got questions about this, but fundamentally it's very interesting. So I don't have to understand the product. I just need to be told the story of its importance. Now, there are other things. So I've invested in a lot of gut health brands, 3 in fact, and that's because I'm passionate about gut health. And so I can see their place, and I invested in most of them about 3 years ago. And of course, gut health is the forefront of what everyone's talking about now. So that is one thing that I'm really passionate about. And then there'll be other things. I've invested in Daisy Natural, who makes beautiful tailored suits for women.
I love Daisy. I love it.
And it's just, for me, this is, oh my God, no brainer. And, you know, I'm a big customer of hers too. So it all makes sense. I've invested in an underwear brand, which is not for me and not for my kids, but I understand that there is a market out there, lemonade dolls, young and fun, who like to show a bit of bra, and want that to be sort of quite a racy colour. I get it. Luxury laundry, I've invested in that. It's things that the luxury laundry actually was a brand that I was using anyhow when she approached me and she said, would you be prepared to invest? So it's got to be something. I mean, my sweet spot is obviously consumer, because that's what I really understand.
And products?
Yes, they say consumer brands, consumer products, that I understand that. I'm less keen on food simply because I don't really understand the life cycle of food. Although saying that, I've done Freya Bane broth, which is obviously food.
Yeah.
And I've done chickpea, which is delicious hummus. and biscuiteers, which is obviously a food. So there are different things, but but if I've got a founder who blows me away by their passion, their excitement, and their knowledge about their industry and the opportunity, I will spend more time with them. And I mean, I do feel so passionately about this. I'm just about to do a series with Mother, who are one of the big UK branding agencies. They're doing, they've got a spin-off called Broody. Within that egg box, they are looking for 12 brands, new starting up brands who are looking to go on an intensive 6-month journey. There are 12 mentors, and we will take them on this journey. We will invest in them financially to get them ready to set them on their journey for looking for investment through Crowdcube. And so that is really everything that I've said in my book. I will be doing that with a single brand as a mentor on this exercise.
How does someone, so obviously there's all that stuff that you're doing. So I think the hardest thing is people say, oh, you should go to the enterprise, you should go to these people, those people. How do people find out? Is it just Googling and talking to everybody where these opportunities are?
Yeah, well, that's why I've done a black book at the back of my book, because I think it's not clear. And in due course, that's actually going to be on my website, because it's not clear how you find out this information. There isn't one point of contact. And I have to say, I found this really difficult when I was working, because you're working so hard. I don't have time to sit there and Google and look for, is there a group of people that can help me? LinkedIn is a great source of information, obviously. But I think, again, you can get sucked into LinkedIn and you suddenly look at your watch and you've been on it for an hour and a half, when actually you've got deadlines that you need to hit for your business. So I found now, as part of a group called By Women Built, which is female-founded consumer brands in the UK, that community is very good through that app about sharing important and interesting things that are happening. There's other communities like Female Founders Rise, who did the same thing, but more with tech-orientated businesses and more services as opposed to products. Yeah. So they are out there, and you just want to get involved. I mean, I chair the Enterprise Investment Scheme Association, which is the trade body for EIS. You might have heard about that. It's one of the first things Rachel Reeves talked about in the budget this year. We've managed to secure some changes to EIS. This is a tax efficient way you can get angel investment. Yeah. So this is really super important for any founder who's looking to attract angel investment to their business, because it is a brilliant way. All my investment came through EIS. It means that you can reclaim some of your income tax, but once you've held that stock for more than 3 years, if there is an exit, it should be capital gains free. So it's a wonderful way to get investment. So joining something like that as an entrepreneur costs nothing to join the EISA, but if you're under 30, it's free.
Yeah, and obviously that's encouraging people to invest, isn't it? So that's the key thing.
And it will put you members of the EIS Association or EIS funds, people that invest in EIS through EIS, as well as entrepreneurs. So it's sort of like Dateline, getting everyone together.
It's so lovely just to see everything you've done. You've brought in, you've gone from investment to Child's Farm, you've done your book. I think, if I'm right in saying, launching a book is pretty hard work as well.
I completely underestimated how much I was going to do, and also how much it's like launching a business. I've been going up and down the country. We're just taking a breather now. We start again in February, and I mean my February is already full. And we are going around and we're talking at different events and opportunities and universities. And I have my little trolley, and in my trolley is my books and my pull-up banners. And I trolley on, pulling it behind me like a little dog. And I set myself up, and then I do everything. I have a great assistant who comes and helps me when she can. But otherwise, I'm doing everything, and it is like going back to basics, and I'm having such a laugh doing it. but it's fun, and I'm meeting people and I'm understanding what the tone of the country is when it comes to entrepreneurship, how everyone is feeling. You know, what are the barriers to entry? What are the hurdles that are stopping them from fulfilling their ambition? And I'm finding that's invaluable, and it means I can share it with people that care.
Oh, I think it's lovely when you go out and meet people and you're there. It's such a great space to be. And also, I think that there's people are going to retire. Female, particularly, they're going to retire much later now, aren't they?
Yes.
So there's going to be that space. You know, people say, "Oh, 50, lovely." Eleanor Mills and Noon, but 60, 70, and you're going to see some extraordinary people come out of the woodwork.
I think, I'm 55 and I'm thinking I've got probably another 10, 15 years in me left where I can be effective before I'm boring. And that is, and that's the same for everyone. And I know that women in particular have can lose confidence, especially if they've been bringing up children and not continuing to work or not feeling that they're doing much intellectually challenging. But don't let that hold you back. Dig into those reserves. Some of you been lawyers, accountants, have been exceptional in your roles before you had children. Just dial it up again because it's still there. Don't think because you've had a timeout, it doesn't mean that you're relevant. If you're intellectually curious, you are always relevant. And what you've got, that burning passion of always looking at things and saying, oh, I see they've done it like that. I'd have done it differently.
I love that. Curiosity is so interesting. Funny enough, I've got a Venny book. I probably need to talk to you about that. But so before we go, because it's just been such an amazing conversation, I'd love you to leave our listeners with 3 key things from this conversation.
Right. So the first one is always going to be know your consumer, know your consumer, know your consumer. If you're going to set up a business, understand who ultimately the end is going to be buying it or using it. That's so important. The second thing is intellectually curiosity. It's so important. Don't be nervous about asking a question. I always find that a lot of people, I always say when I give a talk, if you've got a question, stick your hand up there and then. Because if you're like me, you'll forget it. And then the more you think about asking a question, the more embarrassed or nervous you get about doing it. So that if you've got a question, ask it. Don't hold back. Just get on with it and do it. And the third thing is, in the same way as that intellectual curiosity, is read as much as you can or listen to podcasts as much as you can, because experience beats everything. Everyone will have done what you're going to go through before. So go and hear about their journeys, what they've been through, what their top tips and tricks are, because it'll save you a huge amount of time later on. And I think I wish I'd had more time to do that. So if you have got an idea burning or at the beginning of your journey, get on and do it. If not, do exactly what you do, Caroline. Listen to these podcasts when you're going for a walk or you're on a train, or just carve out some time that is actually being inspired. Because to walk away, sometimes you get really down in the dumps when you're running your own business because it's a lonely old show. And sometimes just listening to someone who's truly inspirational can give you a bit of a va-va-voom. And you can just get that oomph and zhuzh you up, and you sort of walk with a slightly brighter spring in your step.
Every day is a new day. Every day there's an opportunity, and you just have to surround yourself with amazing people or listen to amazing podcasts to give yourself, as you say, that zoom, that excitement, because actually it is a very special space, the entrepreneurial business side. It's hard work, it's lonely, but goodness, you get some amazing feedback and results.
It's so rewarding. And honestly, your confidence builds day by day by day. And there is no such thing as imposter syndrome. That's confidence.
So this podcast is about belief, hard work and tenacity can make many things happen. I actually think sometimes it's the hard work brings belief with tenacity, because sometimes it's just getting started, just doing it.
And it's amazing how hard work brings you such good luck.
There you go. Where can everybody find you? Where can they buy your book? And just leave our listeners with that. We'll put it in the show notes as well.
Brilliant. So the book's available on Amazon, Waterstones, W.H. Smith. You can actually buy it in the US as well through Amazon. You can buy it through Kogan Page, which is my publisher, directly. And if you do that, I can give you a 30% discount, which is CF Sale 30, which we'll put in the show notes as well. If you want to get hold of me or speak to me, I can be reached on my website, which is joannajensen.co.uk. I also do consulting, so I'm really happy to help new businesses, established businesses with specific questions or help. And don't be shy, and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I reply to everyone. It could take me a few days, but I genuinely do reply to everyone. And I love to hear from people and what they're up to.
Well, you're an inspiration. Thank you so much for doing this with me. And I know that everybody's going to get so much benefit from it. And I know, there are going to be lots of people buying that book and waiting for the next one. But thank you again for doing this today.
It's a pleasure, and really pleased to have joined you.